Hello, I'm Doug Watches. Welcome to the Locksmith DVD training program. Like most locks, a great deal can be said about padlocks. The professional locksmith should have a good understanding of how the most common padlocks work. I want to take a few minutes and present some basic information and encourage you to do additional research on the internet. There are hundreds of padlock videos on YouTube. The main objective here is to present basic terminology and basic features of the most common types of padlocks. In this course, we're going to cover basic design characteristics and some ways to work with them. We will talk about master and American locks in many of the examples, but know the concepts apply to many manufacturers. Remember that we covered the A-Bus and the Almont padlocks in course number 16. This course is a presentation of general information about some of the most common padlocks. After completing this course, you should be able to list basic tools and supplies needed to work on common padlocks, list the 3 basic components of all padlocks, list the major components of a spring latch padlock, explain how to shim a padlock, explain how a sesame-style padlock works, explain American lock date codes, explain how to use the silver bullet master bypass tool, explain 3 ways to force open a padlock, explain how to pick a warded padlock, describe the American padlock steel ball bearing design. You should be able to explain how to use the quick rekey features found in some padlocks, rekey an American 700 series padlock, explain how to use a bypass tool to open some American padlocks, explain how a lever style lock works in a padlock, explain at least 4 characteristics to consider when buying a padlock. This course is divided into 15 parts. Part 1 is tools, Part 2 major components of a padlock, Part 3 traditional spring dog padlocks, Part 4 shimming padlocks, Part 5 picking padlocks, Part 6 bypass for master padlocks, Part 7 is forcing or cutting padlocks, Part 8 is picking the warded lock. Part 9, the American padlock. Part 10, rekey American padlocks. Part 11 is on the American Series 700 padlocks. Part 12 is to bypass an American style padlock. Part 13, padlocks with lever locks. Part 14, sesame style padlocks. And Part 15 will be review and practice. We had more padlock video than would fit on this DVD. We have made that video available on our YouTube channel, locksmithdvd.com. So be sure to check there for the additional video, which includes instruction on how to pick the American 1100 series padlock and how to find the combination of a master rotary dial padlock. As far as tools, you'll need the basic tools, pliers, files, picks, etc. You'll need pin kits for the locks that you want to work on. You need a key machine, of course, and then space and depth keys for the locks that you want to work on, unless you have a code machine. You'll be needing some padlock shims. There's different manufacturers that provide these, and I'll talk more about these when we get to the part on shimming padlocks. Now, if you want to service the rekeyable American and master padlocks, you're going to need a pin kit. And you can get one, you can pick up one like this for about $70, $75, something like that. They're not too expensive. And this kit will service both the American and the master rekeyable padlocks. Hopefully you have a way to cut keys for both American and master locks. They are probably the most popular locks in the country, so I would certainly have a way to cut those keys. And the HPC set of code cards, there's 3 cards that cover master, and the 1 card covers both master pros and American locks. Notice that it says here this card is for most master padlocks. For the small pin locks, use card number C34. If it's a Pro Series, you use card number 103. Okay, now I've talked about space and depth keys before, so if you don't have a key machine, a code cutting machine that you can cut the keys with to code, it'd be a good idea to have a space and depth keys for the master lock. You will need to become familiar with the different code series for master lock. The most popular one is for most of the locks is the 1 through 10,000 series. Standard large pin master locks use a total of 8 depths, 0 through 7. Spacing is going to be either 4 spaces or 5 spaces, depending if it's a 4-pin lock or a 5-pin lock. Standard key is the M1 key for the 4-pin locks. If you have a 5-pin, you may use either the M10 or the M11 key blank. Okay, this chart here is from the American Lock Manual. These are the cuts for the American Lock series. Again, there's 8 depths. They are the same as the Master Lock Pro Series 0 through 7. American uses the numbers 1 through 8. Now, it's my understanding that this HPC card 103A will work for all of the American locks. You'll also come across American locks that use the rounded key, the A-style key. You'll find in their manual the depths for those cuts. They have 7 depths that they use for that style of key. Now, this is an older lock, and one of the ways you can tell is by the code stamp on the bottom. Years ago, many of the master padlocks came with the code stamp on the bottom. They are on the keys. This is the key for 2406. It's the same number. But if you didn't have the key and you look this up in your code source or whatever software you're using for codes, you could get the cuts for the key. Then use your HPC machine or whatever code machine you have and duplicate the key for it. The cuts on this key were 4645. Again, that was for code number 2406. It's an M1 key blank. Looking here at a JET key blank catalog, on the American lock, you can see that there's an AM1, AM3, an AM6, an AM7, and then there's the AM6 and AM7 long for the 6-pin locks. And here the AM7 is for 6-pin locks. Now I normally just stock the AM6. I normally just make sure I always have the AM6 in stock, but you could carry all 4 of those if you wanted to. And then for the master key blanks, M1, M10, M12, M13, M2, M16, and then MD17. You'll want to go to masterlock.com and download these manuals for the American locks and the master locks. They're free to download at this time. And you may want to check other manufacturers for other service manuals that may be available for you on the internet. Another tool is the Silver Bullet Bypass tool by Peterson Tools. It's designed to open some master padlocks. It's not essential that you have the tool, but since it's out there, I do want to talk about it, and I will demonstrate it later in the course. Peterson also makes this little bypass tool for the American style steel ball bearing locks. It'll work on some American locks, some import locks that have the ball bearings in them. It will not work on every lock, but I'll demonstrate this later in the course. Now, a couple of more tools I want to show you that just so you'll know about them. I'm not going to demonstrate them in this course. I may do a YouTube video about them later, but this is called the Disc Buster. It's from ProLock, and it's designed to help you drill the locks on a disc type lock. You just put it in there, line it up as a hole. You line up with a 3/16 inch bit and just drill the lock. So this again is from ProLock. It's called the Disc Buster. Now another tool that doesn't get used much is this ProLock drill jig, and I'm not going to demonstrate it again. It doesn't get used that much, but it helps to center the padlock with a hole to drill through, and it comes with reference material to help you identify where the retainer pin would be located at and the size of bit to use to drill the retainer pin. I talked about these in the very early courses, but just to go over it again, it's a good idea to have some picks for warded locks when working with padlocks. In addition to basic hand tools, you will need pin kits and key blanks for the most popular locks that you plan to work on. Some locks, the A-Bus for example, will use standard key blanks like Schlage and Kwikset. American padlocks can use the same pin kit as the Master Pro series of locks. The M1 key blank is the most common of the master padlock blanks. The most common master padlock code is the series 1 through 10,000. Older master padlocks were stamped with a key code. All padlocks have three things in common. They have a shackle of some type, they have a case, and they have a locking mechanism of some type. In this example, we have a standard pin tumbler lock cylinder here that operates this lock. This case is solid brass and the shackle is hardened steel. Now when I talk about the heel and toe of the padlock, this part that comes loose would be the toe. The part that doesn't come loose would be the heel. Padlocks have three basic parts: a body or a case, a shackle, and a locking mechanism. Here's a lock I'm sure many of you will recognize by the size and shape of the shackle. This is for a bicycle, isn't it? Has a Master 55 lever lock on it. We'll talk more about this type of lock later in the course. But again, you have a shackle and a case and a locking mechanism. And in this case, it's a lever lock. Again, another pretty long shackle. Again, a master lock. We can look at the key and tell, well, we're working with a warded lock in this case. So the three parts of the lock: shackle, case, locking mechanism is a warded lock. And here's a shrouded shackle, shrouded to give it more protection. We have a disc lock. Again, that shackle is partly shrouded. As far as the case, there is a large selection of shapes and sizes: smaller, large, round or square, light or heavy. Normally, the more secure locks are heavier, but not always. There is a wide range of locking mechanisms. You have the common pin tumbler with the simple pin setup to high security pins. You have high-tech locks. You can use a fingerprint, a voice command, or a cell phone to open. You have common wafer locks. It can be either single-sided or double-sided wafers. You have a warded lock that uses a simple spring bar to hold the shackle down. You have lever locks, and there's various designs of levers. We'll look at a few of those. Combination locks, again, various designs, and we'll look at a few of those also. With this master padlock, we have a warded lock. We studied warded locks way back in the first course. We've talked about warded locks some since then, but this key-operated lock is a warded lock. Again, with the shackle and the laminated steel plating to make up the lock body. Here in this example of this disc lock, we can see that it has a standard pin tumbler locking cylinder. Here's the case, and of course the shackle's up here. This padlock, we have a shackle, case, and then a combination lock. Another type of combination lock is your standard school locker lock with the rotary dial on it, which nearly everybody is familiar with. So you can have the rotary dial, or you can have the wheel assembly like we have on this master padlock, again, that was made famous as the Sesame padlock. This is an older padlock. It's made by Corbin Cabinet, and it works a little bit different than the ones I was just showing you. There's all kinds of designs on padlocks, but you put the key in and you just push in on the key. See, as you push in the key, the shackle goes up and then it will turn. So you'll come across all kinds of designs with padlocks. Again, that's by Corbin Cabinet. This padlock, again, the shackle, the case, pin cylinder, and this particular case is made out of plastic so that we can see through it. And I'm going to use this padlock a little later to explain all the different parts inside the lock. As far as lock mechanisms, here's a lock with a warded keyway and a spring bar dogging down the shackle. Many of the simple warded key padlocks just have a piece of spring steel that comes in and be hooked on one side and come across, and it'll catch the shackle in a notch. The key goes in, and as you turn the key, it just presses against the piece of spring steel. moves it back and the shackle can pop up. This next lock is a Master 55. It's a 2-lever lock. We'll look at it more later in the course. Here's a lock that says it uses the lever locking mechanism. On the case it says it has 8 levers, and we will look at lever locks later in the course. Here are a few different combination locks. These first 2 smaller ones are luggage locks, and then we have 2 larger ones here. This alloy padlock is a well-made high-security lock. It has a steel lock body with chrome plating that provides additional protection from harsh weather. And of course it uses the alloy disc lock. It currently runs about $600 for this padlock. Probably one of the best padlocks out there is the Sargent and Greenleaf 951. It uses a Medico biaxial lock. The shackle is hardened and is also shrouded. It has a stainless steel body. It is currently priced at about $2,700. When recommending a padlock, consider, is the lock for inside or outside use? Does it need to be exterior rated? How much use will the lock get? Is it going to be used several times per day or only a few times per year? How much security is needed? Do you need an extremely secure locking mechanism, or will a moderate locking mechanism do the job? Then think about the size of the shackle and the case. Will they fit the location the owner wants the lock for? Always consider these 3 dimensions: the body of the padlock, the diameter of the shackle or bolt, the clearance under the shackle or bolt. Ensure that the padlock sizes are suitable for the customer's intended use. When considering security, think about how strong the case is. Is it made out of brass or steel or some other type of metal? How strong is the shackle? How thick is it? Has the metal been hardened? How strong is the locking mechanism? Do you need a high security lock like Multi-Lock or Medico? See, here you have just a regular gate latch, small gate latch on a small gate. You wouldn't want to sell a big padlock for this. The shackle has to be small enough to go through this hole up here. And then of course you have to have enough distance between the shackle and the lock to that the lock can hang down like so. It's kind of ideal anyway. Here we can see a padlock being used to secure a cabinet in a retail store. It's a combination lock. The padlock is a size that works okay. The combination lock gives the employees easy access to the cabinet. Okay, the first locks we're going to look at are the basic generic or standard lock. Has spring-loaded dogs in it. I'm going to explain that more in just a minute. The difference between these 2 locks here, or one difference at least, is you have a solid case. This is CCL, Corbin Cabinet Lock Company, very famous lock company. We've talked about their locks before. And then of course here we have a laminated steel plate lock, which is very common, made very popular by Master Lock, and we'll talk more about those later also. But for right now, what I want to do is try to understand what really is working inside the lock, so that when you look at the lock, you should be able to imagine in your mind what's happening inside the lock when you turn the key. I want to talk for just a minute about how the lock is made. If this is a solid case, how did they get the parts in there? If it's a laminated lock, like this lock, they just put the parts in as they build the lock up. The laminations are stacked up, the parts can be put in where they go. But if you have a lock that has a solid case, like this brass case lock, how'd they get the parts inside there? Well, the first thing they would do is they would drill a hole. They're going to need a deeper hole for the heel side of the shackle, and then whatever depth the hole they need for the toe side, they would drill that. They're going to drill a hole horizontally across here so they can slide in the locking dogs and the spring. And they're going to drill a hole for the retaining pin, the plug retaining pin, and each of the pin stacks. Of course, there'd be a hole drilled for the plug to go up in. So they would take their shackle, they would cut their notches into the shackle whatever milling it needed, they would do their milling, and they would bend the shackle, and then they would drop the spring down in the case, put the shackle in, and they would have a hole drilled here. The retaining pin goes in. Then once it's in there, they'll plug that hole. They would drill a hole up through the center of the lock from the bottom for the plug to go up into. And they're going to drill these holes for each of the chambers, the retaining pin and the pin stacks. Is 3 pin stacks. You're going to need 3 chambers, 4, 4, 5, and so on. They would drill those. Once they put the pins down in to the chambers, and the retaining pin goes down in this chamber, they're going to plug. They're going to put a plug in here on each one of these holes, and they're going to plug it. Kind of like you would do with some interchangeable core locks where you plug the chambers. Then they're going to take the lock, once it's all put together and all the plugs are in, they're going to polish it off to where you can't even see them. If you look real close on some solid case locks, you can see some of the holes. Here you can see a brass lock case which has been drilled out and is now ready to have all of its working parts added. Notice that this lock has all of the parts I just talked about on the drawing. Has a shackle, has a case, has a locking mechanism, and this does have the 2 dogs that catch both the heel and the toe of the shackle. We can see the retaining pin here, and I'll move it closer in a minute, but I want you to see there's the retaining pin. Then here's our pin stacks. Here. Shackle's been milled and is down in there. Here's your shackle spring. And then the retaining pin on the shackle, if I turn it over, you can see the shackle has been milled off on this side and the retaining pin has been put in right here. It's the retaining pin here. And then you can see the shackle has been milled off here. It's been milled more here at the bottom part of it. And this is the travel distance for the shackle. You could push it down. You couldn't push it down any further than that. That's going to hit against the retaining pin. And when it pops up, it can come clear to here. That's going to hit against the retaining pin and stop it. Here's your shackle spring here. I'll go ahead and open the lock and you can see that. See how the spring expanded? And here's the bottom of the shackle right here hitting against the retaining pin. This is a 4-pin tumbler lock here. This is your retaining pin for the plug here. Then we have our 4 pin stacks. Watch, as I move the key back and forth, you can see the pin stacks move. But it never moves the retaining pin, does it? Because the key doesn't touch the retaining pin. And here again you can see where the holes were plugged. Here you can see the hole that was drilled in the case to allow the locking dogs to be put into the case. Locking dog springs are up here. On top of the plug is a cam that grabs these locking dogs and moves them. Here's a close-up of retracting the locking dogs. Again, there's a cam on top of the plug. When I turn that, I'm going to try to show from the bottom. You see both locking dogs are being moved towards the center of the case. If you look at the plug there, you can see the 4 bottom pins are at the shear line, but there's nothing there where the retaining pin is there? The retaining pin doesn't have a bottom pin. It just acts more like a top pin holding that plug in there. In locksmithing, locking dogs refer to a holding or latching device of some type. For example, some push bars can be locked in their pushed or open position. Locksmiths refer to this as dogging the lock. In a padlock, the locking latches that hold the shackle down are often referred to as locking dogs. Another term you will hear in place of locking latch is locking pawl. A lock pawl normally refers to a lock tailpiece, often used in automotive locks. Now this is a door lock out of a car. Here's the keys in the lock. You can see if I turn the key, it moves this piece on the end of it. Well, this end piece, which is held on here with a clip, this is normally referred to as a pawl. In a rotary dial lock, like this one, there is a piece in here that we refer to as a pawl, but it acts more like the tail piece on the lock I just showed you. And we'll get into that more in the section on rotary dial locks. In a rotary dial combination lock, this would be the locking pawl here, and it would turn down once the combination of the lock was worked. This would come down, and this would go back, and it would release the shackle. This would be the locking pawl here. Okay, so just to review the parts quickly one more time, we have the shackle, we have the shackle spring, we have the shackle retainer, we have the case. This lock is a pin cylinder lock. We have a plug. We have our pins. We have our bottom pins, top pins, springs. We have our caps to hold everything in the correct chambers. We have the latches. You can see one of the latches right here. And then we have the latch springs in there. Watch right here, and I'll turn the key, and you'll see that latch pull back, and that shackle will pop open. It's coming back. I'll do it one more time. So those are the basic parts that are in any type of spring latch or spring dog padlock. So the same thing is happening when I turn this key in this padlock here. And hopefully we can imagine what this plug looks like in there. It's going to be a normal cylinder type pin cylinder. It's going to have the cam on the end up here. It's going to have the two locking dogs. The shackle, hopefully you can imagine the shackle coming down through the case. And then if I turn it, pops open. And again, we can see one of the locking dogs that holds the toe side of the shackle here. Three of the major weaknesses of the pin cylinder spring dog padlock are it can be picked, it can be shimmed, and it can be forced open. What we have here are lock shims, and there's 4 different sizes here. That's the 4 common sizes that you normally get when you buy padlock shims. This is the biggest one here. This is the smallest one here. You want to try one that's about the right size for the shackle on the padlock that you're working on. So normally you're going to get 4 different size shims in a packet. And with this set, the Sparrow set, there's 20 shims in the packet for right around $20, 4 different sizes, so you get 5 of each one. This is the 3rd largest shim that I have in the set, and if I put it on the shackle, it looks like it makes a pretty good fit. See, it wraps around the shackle real tight. And that's what we want. So I'm going to use a couple of these, and we'll try to shim this lock. I have the key for it, so I can just show you that it has a pretty good size shackle on it, and it locks on both the heel and the toe. You always have to assume that a padlock is locked on both sides, unless you know the lock for sure. You can try the toe and see if that releases the lock. If it doesn't, then it may be locked on the other side. This lock has spring-loaded locking dogs that hold the shackle, and so it should be able to be shimmed. If it's the type of lock that has the ball bearings that come out and hold the shackle, those cannot be shimmed. It has to be one with the spring-loaded locking mechanism to shim it. Okay, now there's a couple of techniques for trying to shim a lock, and you can practice and see what you like. the best. But normally what most people do is they'll put the shim at the back or the front, not turned around to the side. They'll have it at the back or the front, and they'll push the shim down, and then they'll twist it around. Some people think it's better just to try to force and on some locks it might work better to force the shim straight down, but normally we put it down to the side of the shackle like this, work it all the way down, and then start turning it around. So I have it all the way down. The front of the shackle is right here. You can see it. I'm going to try to twist it around so it's inside, facing the inside here where the locking mechanism is. Sometimes you can kind of push on the shackle a little bit and move it a little bit. It may help to get it turned around. The other thing I want to tell you is a lot of these demonstrations I see on the internet, people are putting the padlock in a vise to hold it. It's easier to shim the lock if it's in a vise because it holds it so solidly. But that's not real life. When you go on a job, the padlock is not going to be in a vise for you. So you could practice that just for practice, but then try to hold the padlock and do it without putting it in a vise. I know my hands are probably in the way for part of this, but it takes a lot of pressure sometimes to twist that around there. I think that's around, you see it's not quite, it came back up a little bit right here. We'll see if that'll work. Let's try to do the other side. So, same thing, I'm going to go down the back of it. That went down pretty easy. In fact, that turned real easy. See if it'll release. This one shim may not be quite deep enough. There, we got it. So that's how you shim a padlock. But it takes a little bit of practice. If the padlock is shimmable, you shouldn't have too much trouble once you practice a little bit and able to do it. Points to remember when shimming a padlock: be sure the padlock is not the ball-bearing American-style padlock. In other words, make sure that the padlock is shimmable. And second, use a shim that fits the shackle diameter. Okay, so we're going to pick this little master padlock to start off as far as practicing. It's a little number 1 master 4-pin cylinder lock. We'll start same techniques we learned in course number 2 about lock picking. We're going to put the tension wrench here at the bottom of the keyway. Only thing I'd say on some of these locks that have these rivets, make sure that your wrench is not caught on the rivet. We're going to put light tension on the tension wrench. Just see what we feel. Feels like all the pins are moving fine. I want to increase the pressure on the tension wrench. Have a little hook pick here. There we have it. So just again, just standard standard picking techniques, open and lock. Lock here, it's on a chain. A customer brought in a chain with several padlocks on it. He's not really wanting keys made, he just wants to keep the padlocks, just take them off the chain so he can have them. This one has TID on it. This was made for a utility company out in California. For an exercise in picking a padlock, we're going to just try to pick this one here. That way, I'm going to try to put counterclockwise pressure on the lock, and we'll see if it does anything. Three was a little sticky, maybe. The fifth pin it's moving. It's not real sticky. It was earlier. I'm going to increase the pressure on the tension wrench. Okay, we got it. So one point I wanted to make about picking padlocks, it was pretty good tension on the tension wrench before I was able to pick this open. So you might start off with light, but just remember when you're dealing with a padlock, it may take some pretty serious tension to get the plug to move. And then once the plug does move and you know it's picked, you may have to get a screwdriver to actually finish turning the plug, depending on the tension from the springs on the lock and how strong your tension wrench is. I haven't really talked about these tension wrenches before that are becoming more and more popular. They're referred to as pry bar style tension wrenches, and I'm seeing them used quite a bit more on the internet, as opposed to the more traditional style of tension wrench that I taught using in course number 2 on lockpicking. But here's a set of 4. The difference in these first 3 are the ends. You can see that the way the end is shaped and how long the end is different. These 2 here actually are identical as far as their ends. This one here is thicker. It's 40 thousandths of an inch thick. These first 3 are about 30 thousandths of an inch. And that's the difference between these 2. Otherwise, these 2 are identical. So there's really 3 different end pieces, and then 1 that is a different thickness. You can see that if you were going to use a tension wrench like this on a, say, American-style padlock where the lock is recessed down in there, you wouldn't be able to use the short end. You'd have to use the longer end. And that's the reason for having 2 different lengths on the ends. And also on the this component right here, this is thicker. This is a little wider here than what this piece is right here. So you can also choose based on that which one's better for you. I want to just show this concept of using these pry bars. This is an American lock. You can see that the lock cylinder is recessed down in there below this plate a little bit. And so when you picked out your turning tool, you'd have to get one that's deep enough to go in there. You can see here if I try to use the shallow end, it's not going to be deep enough. It needs the deeper end, and that will go in there okay, and you can put it in, and you can see that it turns it. The only thing is that make sure it doesn't interfere with the operation of that first pin right there. So you can try these tools and decide what works for you. No matter which tension wrench you choose, it should do 4 things. 1, it should fit the keyway. Second, it should not interfere with the picking process. In other words, it's not going to be in the way of your picking tool or the pins. 3, it should provide good feedback. You should be able to feel what the pins are doing. And 4, it must be comfortable to use. I do not have time here, but I will make a bonus video showing the steps for learning how to pick the American 1100 series padlock. The same process will work for many locks. The video will be available on our YouTube channel, Locksmith DVD. This kit is the Silver Bullet Master Padlock Bypass Kit. It's made by Peterson Tool. These little tools make up what is known as the Silver Bullet Bypass tools for Master Padlock. You have an A tool and you have a B tool. It comes with instructions. The directions say that this will work for Master Padlocks numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then it says it'll work partially for 5 and 6. And it even includes 2 again in this group. And what it says with 2, 5, and 6 is that you may have to use shims to finish opening the lock. So if you use the tool, the Silver Bullet tool, and the lock doesn't open the numbers 2, 5, and 6, at least you can go ahead and finish shimming the lock and get it open. But it's supposed to open 1, 3, and 4 without using any shims. And again, it has the number 2 locks in both locations. So I assume it will work sometimes with number 2 padlocks, and sometimes maybe it won't. A tool here, you can see the B tool has more of a curvature to it, and it's a tiny bit longer than the A tool. So this is the B, this is the A. It's holding the lock in a kind of a normal position with the bottom of the keyway at the bottom of the lock. Take the A tool, go in behind right below the top pins, and pick up on those top pins. Get clear to the back there, and again you have to pick the top pins up till there's a hole there, and you'll feel that when that goes in. I think it's in there. It feels like it's in there pretty good. Sometimes you'll see it move and you can say, oh, okay, it went in, but I'm pretty sure that went in there. Turn the lock over the other way. Take the other tool, which is the B tool, and I'm going in, so I turn the lock over. I'm going in the top of the lock. Slide that tool in there and pop the lock open. Okay, to do that once more, orient the padlock so the bottom of the keyway is down. Take the A tool, go in underneath those top pins, push them up, push those pin stacks up, you'll fill that hole. And I actually think that tool went in. Felt like it went in. We'll turn it over and we'll try the B tool. So now I've turned the padlock the other way, going in. Put the tool back at the back of the plug there. You should again find a hole right back there that tool wants to go in. This is the B tool. I'm going to try I was in front of this tool, I'm going to go behind this tool. There we go. So again, just real quick, what the directions recommend is that you hold the lock so that the top of the keyway where the blade is up. In other words, the pins or at the top of the lock. Take the A tool, stick it in underneath the pins, push it all the way to the back, and then once the A tool is in there, take the B tool. It recommends you put it behind the A tool and go in at the bottom of the lock. The way I normally do it is I'll put the A tool in, then I'll just flip the lock over, which is what I did a minute ago, and I didn't want to confuse you when I did that. But the A tool, just remember the A tool always is the one that goes and pushes the pins, the top pins up, and the B tool is the one that is going at the bottom of the keyway. Of course, if I flip it over like in my demonstration, then it's at the top of the lock, isn't it? So you can practice with different techniques and see what works good for you. Now I want to take just a couple of minutes and show you what's inside the lock, and if you've never done this, this is a good exercise. Just get a master padlock and a Dremel tool and cut the rivets off the end. So you can see here the bottom plates come off. I've did just what I said. I took a Dremel and I cut the rivets off the end of these posts. And of course this plastic ring was around here like this, so I cut that loose, and the spring that pushes the shackle up was it already popped out. It was right here at the bottom. The plate holds that spring in there, so when the plate came off, then of course the spring came out, and then you can see the shackle moving it right there. And here's the lock, and we can just take the lock out. You can see it's a little 4-pin cylinder lock. See the cam on the back? So you can see the cam right here. It sticks up on the back. When the tools go through the lock, you see what's happening is the tools are coming out the back of the plug. And so this is the A tool. I'd push the pins up, and you have to get that up in order to hit that in the right slot. You have to push those pins up. Then the B tool, of course, is coming in at the bottom of the lock like so. And inside the lock, you can see that if you look up in there, you can see where the cam goes down and lines up against these plates down here. And the tools are going in on either side of this center part. They're pushing in, and they're able to grab the locking plates and pull them back. That's what's happening. Now, assuming that we are unconcerned about any potential damage to the padlock, we have 3 viable options for using force. We can often open the lock by hitting down on the top of the case. Sometimes we can pry the shackle open, and we always have the option of cutting the lock. I will demonstrate each method. Okay, so one way to force a lock open is to hit down on the top of the lock. If it's a type of lock that has spring-loaded dogs in it, it'll often pop open. Now I don't have room to get a good hit with a hammer on the lock, so I'm going to just take a punch, line the punch up right on as close as I can to the center. So it took a couple of whacks, but it's open. Okay, now another method that has become popular in the last few years as far as overpowering a lock is to take a couple of open-end wrenches. Just put the open-end wrenches into the center of the lock and then pull the handles together and break the case, like so. And you can see that it's open. What it does is it just breaks the side of the case out. That was very simple to do that. Here you can see that it just broke the side of the case out and bent the shackle. Another version of the same technique using the 2 open-end wrenches is to put one wrench in horizontally and then put another wrench in vertically and try to pry up on the shackle by just pushing down on the one that's vertical. The other wrench just serves as a spacer. And that's another way to open the lock. You can see it damaged the end of the shackle right here, bent it a little bit, maybe broke a few little pieces, chips out of it. Here it broke where it popped the plug out of the side of the case. It was in the side of the case where they put the locking dogs through in that brass case. One of the easiest ways to get a lock off is just to take your grinder with a cutting blade on it. And I demonstrated this in video 7 in Bypass of Locks, that this is an easy way to get into a lot of locks, especially since we have the battery powered grinders now. See, it just cuts it right off, no problem. And I've talked to you in earlier courses about these, just a warded lockpick, and these come in a set that you can get from any lock supplier. But if it's just a warded lock, basically, those are pretty simple to go in there and open. See, it opens right up. The number 22 master padlock is a warded lock, but it can be a little more challenging and may take some practice, as it has 2 locking points. I am sure that in the future you will see even more changes to these types of locks. We can go up in there and we can feel that. I can feel that piece of, I don't know if you noticed it jumped a little bit. The lock jumped a little bit then, and it didn't open though, but it did jump. There's a second wire down here holding this. See that? There's 2 of them. Just a side note, Harry Saref developed the laminated steel padlock in 1919 for use by the armed forces during World War I. He would go on to found Master Lock in 1921. One story is that Harry's inspiration for the idea came from his knowledge of laminated bank vault doors. An article in the Popular Science magazine in March of 1932 stated that the 22 steel plates were riveted together under 150 tons of pressure. The article indicated that the lock body was stronger than a solid steel block. John Junket came to the United States from Hungary in the early 1900s. He initially worked as a railroad machinist. He invented the first dial combination lock because of frequently misplaced keys. In 1912, he bought the American Cylinder Company, which eventually became the American Lock Company. Their trademark design features 2 steel balls fitting into grooves in the shackle, forming a very solid locking unit. The company also featured a removable pin cylinder to make it easy to rekey the lock. American Lock offered other innovations, including the affordable solid steel padlock, high security cover plates, serrated pins, and a shackleless padlock. In 2003, Master Lock Company acquired American Lock Company. Master Lock continues to manufacture American Lock products. Additionally, they have integrated many of American Lock's features into their own professional line of padlocks, which is sold under the Master Lock brand name. So to deal with that weakness in the lock, where the spring-loaded locking dogs were at, a couple of brothers called the Junket brothers in the early 1900s patented a system that locks the shackle with 2 steel balls. They have a ball on each side, and then they have a locking bolt here in the center. As they turn that bolt, it's solid right up against the steel ball bearings, and so it's solid steel all the way across between the shackle. And that makes for a very, very strong lock. Now, a lot of these parts are the same. In fact, they're basically the same parts that we saw in the last lock: shackle, case, locking cylinder, shackle spring. There'd be a retainer for the shackle. New to this lock, we have the steel ball bearings. We have this locking actuator in here that turns this locking bolt. This lock is rekeyable, and they have a regular pin cylinder here, and we'll look at one in a minute. They have a regular pin cylinder here that you can take out. Just has a plate, cover plate, held by a screw. If you open the lock, you can take the screw out, you can take the cylinder out, and you can rekey the lock, so it's rekeyable. But again, as far as the terminology, you have the shackle, the case, the locking mechanism, and in this case we have a few additional parts like the screw and the security nut and the cover plate and so on. Here we have a cutaway view of an American style padlock with the ball bearings. This is in the open position. You can see that the bar is turned right here. This locking bolt right here is turned, so there's enough room for the ball bearings to move around and to release the shackle. We have the shackle spring here. We have our pin cylinder. Here's the top pins and the bottom pins. And we have the springs up here. There's a cam here. It turns the locking bolt. Here's a close-up of the two steel ball bearings and the bolt at the top part of the lock. Okay, now as I mentioned, the Master Padlock Company bought American Lock, and they've incorporated the same design with the two steel ball bearings in here. So I want to switch for my demonstration and move ahead with this Master Pro Series 6840 padlock. Again, which is the insides are basically identical to the American Lock I was just talking about. And we'll come back and talk more about the American Lock later in the course. I'd like you to notice the code on the key here, 14G934. And notice that this is a 6000B blank. And when you take the lock apart, you want to pay close attention to how everything is put in there. To start with, notice that this keyway is angled towards the left side of this pin right here. This is the nut that holds the retaining bolt is for this plate right here. This is the nut, and it's the lock is oriented so that the Bible of the lock is more towards this side here. Let's go ahead and open it up. Now, notice as I turn the key, the shackle does not pop up. This is no spring in this shackle. So we take this out, there's not going to be a spring in here to put back. You have to just pull it and push it back whenever you're ready to do it. It doesn't pop up. So we'll go ahead and again, this is the nut, the retaining screw we can see down in there. And this looks like probably a 7/64. I believe it's what that is. Yeah, that's what it feels like. And it'll be a little sticky. They usually put a little bit of sealant on those threads. So, Loctite. Okay, so we have this piece out, and then the screw will come out. You can see there's some blue Loctite on that screw. That's why it was a little snug to get out. Plate will come off the bottom. And again, notice that what I was talking about is how the lock is oriented. Let's be in the front of the lock. This the heel side of the shackle. This the toe side. And the lock was up like this. It's not the other way, it's not down here. So that's important to pay attention to that. So I'll turn it up and the lock cylinder will come out. And the next thing we want to look at is we want to look down in there at that actuator, the lock actuator. Notice kind of right here at the end of my pointer right there, kind of a pie looking cam on the back of. So when you turn the lock, the tail piece on the lock, this cam here will interface with the actuator and turn it. But it's important that the actuator get put back in there, again, just like it is. Get a good look inside there. One thing about this, there's on top of this actuator is a washer and there's a spring under it. And I have had those come loose. So it's important to notice how it's positioned so you can get it back on in the right position and get it back in the lock with the right position. Okay, so if we take and close the lock, the component that's up in here should come out if we tap it. Here's your lock actuator. I only see one ball bearing. And of course you can see the shackle will come out now. So if you want to change the shackle, it might be somebody has a lock that the shackle's not big enough. They need a longer shackle. Maybe they want a shorter shackle. So you can get different size shackles. So again, here's the actuator. And as I was saying, there's a kind of a washer on top. It comes underneath this piece, this tail piece on the plug. And then there's a spring under that. But this is loose on there, and if you were to drop this or get kind of rough with this can come apart and you're going to end up having to put it back together. So you want to be cautious with that. So here you can see what it would look like inside the lock when the lock was locked. Your actuator's turned, so you have solid steel. You have the shackle, the ball bearing, solid steel actuator, bolt, and another ball bearing. And then in the unlocked position, the ball bearings would go into the recess as the bolt was turned to allow for the lock to open. So that's how the lock works. Now to put it back together, put your shackle back in. Then we'll drop the ball bearings down in there. They have a little grease on them, so they're a little bit sticky. And you can add a little grease if you need to. This is out of a manual for the Pro Master padlocks. And just a note about these actuators, it says that typically these Pro Series are supplied as non-key retaining. But there are some that are key retaining, and there's 5 different actuators. So pay attention to the one that you have. Here's, again, from the same manual, they're showing the 12 o'clock position where this piece up here is right at 12 o'clock, and here you see it's turned around more or less at the 8 o'clock position. So as you're taking your lock apart, you want to pay attention to how this is turned so as to make sure that it goes back, it's turned the same way. So we see it there. And then just take something that you can reach down in there and try to push it back up where it belongs. One will be one on one side, one on the other. You can see they're both in there. And if I turn it a little bit, just slightly, they both appear to be out of the way right there. So that we could take our cam and go ahead and drop our cam back in. Now we're putting it down in the locked position. if this recessed part is toward the ball bearings, it's in the unlocked position. If it's away from the ball bearings, then it's in the locked position. And I'm going to drop it back down. That's the way it goes in. It goes in the locked position. So, and it looks like it fell right back down in there. I'll give it just, I don't believe it went all the way down. There it goes. Didn't go all the way down. I think that one ball bearing came out, and I tilted it back, the ball bearing back, and then it went on down. But that's back where it was. Then if I wanted to rekey my lock, I could rekey the lock. Just, there's no need to take the clip off the back. It has these holes that you can rekey it in. So if we drop our lock cylinder back in there, put our plate back on, then we can take our, this is the cap or the nut for the retaining screw that holds the plate there. For some reason it doesn't feel like it's going in. There it goes. Goes in all the way. And then I just hold on to that. We'll go ahead and open the lock. And remember, we got to pull it out by hand because there's no spring. Then we'll put the retaining screw back in. So a lot of these newer locks don't use a Phillips head, they use a hex wrench head. And you can usually tell when that starts in there. So that's in there, it's good and tight. And the lock should be working okay. We'll lock it back. Pull the shackle up. And then you can just lock it back. You don't need the key in it to lock it back. You can see it's operational, working fine. So if you wanted to rekey it or you wanted to change the shackle out, again, main thing when you're just starting out working with these is to be careful and look at that, how all the parts fit together, in particular the actuator and the way the actuator's turned in there. American Lock stamps most of their lock bodies with a date code. Here we can see an older three-letter code, OGJ. In a three-letter code like this, the first letter is the month and the last two letters are the year. This lock was made in December of 1985. Here is a list of the codes. We can see that O is for December, G is for 8, and J is for 5, giving us December of 85. This lock was made in December of 1985. If a lock is stamped with 4 letters, you only use the first 3 letters. Notice that you can generate the codes yourself by making a list of the 12 months followed by the digits 1 through 0, and then writing the alphabet backwards next to them. Most newer codes, after 2013, use a 4-number system. The first 3 numbers are for the day of the year, and the last digit is for the year. This lock was made the 183rd day of 2021. The AE refers to the machine operator who made the lock. Some key points are that you cannot shim this 2-ball bearing design. The locks are easy to rekey, and you also can get the lock with different keyways. Now, if all we want to do is just rekey the padlock, we don't have to take all the insides out of the padlock. We just very carefully tip it up so the lock falls out and everything else stays up inside the lock just like it was. Now, to rekey the lock, if you have the key, it's pretty easy to do. It's a new design with the holes in the back of the lock. And all we have to do is just, if we're careful, just turn the key around 180 degrees and we can see the bottom pins right there. And okay, so you see now I've dumped the pins out. Now what I don't want to do is pull this key out with the key in this position. You need to turn the key 90 degrees. If I pull the key out of there right now, all of the springs and top pins are lined up with these holes, and they will come shooting up through these holes. I'll have to rebuild the lock. Just turn the lock 90 degrees, then you can take your key out. The top pins are locked in there. Put your new key blank in, turn it back, put your new bottom pins in that match your new key, turn it back around, then it's rekeyed. Okay, now a good pair of tweezers comes in handy to get these pins back in this lock. These pins are quite small. Now I'm just putting this back like it was. I'm not changing the key out, but if I wanted to change the key, I would have just put in the pins to match the new key. And then we just turn that back around. Take the key out, and it's rekeyed. Like I said, the main thing is not to pull the key out. Once you dump the bottom pins out, don't let your key slip. Let's check it and make sure it works. See, it still works fine. Let me show that one more time. Turn your plug just so that it's not straight up and down with your chambers. Now, if I had taken the bottom pins out, I could pull the key out. I can't pull it out with those bottom pins in there, but you dump them out, turn your key, pull the original key out, put your new key in, then turn your new key back up like so, put in your new bottom pins for your new key, and then turn it back around and it's all set. It's rekeyed. But you can see that this catching does happen a little bit. I think it's this one here is mainly seems to be the problem. Yes. So that's how you rekey that. The lock is easy to rekey as long as you remember that once the bottom pins are removed, the key must be turned 90 degrees before removing the old key from the plug. Going to look at an American padlock here. This is a Series 700 padlock. It's an older padlock. Okay, this one has a Phillips screw down in it. So we'll take the screw out, and there's a couple things here I want to show you about this. Here's the lock cylinder, and you see it looks just like the master lock cylinder that we rekeyed. It has the holes in the bottom, so it's easy rekey. And that's basically the same as with the master that I already demonstrated. Now in rekeying the lock, the only difference between this and the master that I rekeyed earlier for you is that American locks use a different numbering system. Master padlock uses 0 through 7 for their pins. American uses 1 through 8. Now to rekey the lock in a traditional manner, if you don't have a key to it, of course you do it the same way we covered in course number 3 with rekeying locks. Pick the lock to an open position, take the clip off the back, get a follower the same size as your plug, push your plug out, repin it, push it back in, and put the clip back on the back. I'm not going to take time to do that in this course. As I mentioned, you can look at that in course number 3 if you need more help with that. There are a number of companies that sell a lock that looks like the American lock. This one says U.S. General on it. It's an import lock. It's made with the same basic concept as the American lock, and they're very cheap. They're not hardly worth rekeying. You can buy them today for under $10, so it's almost cheaper to buy a new lock than it is to try to rekey it. But they are somewhat difficult to rekey, especially if you don't know how the plug has been ground. Now, in these import locks, these plugs are different. First off, notice that there's no clip on the back. It doesn't even come through far enough to give a clip on the back. And there is a retainer pin. And I've noticed on some of these newer ones, they don't even give access. There's no access hole through the plug to access the retainer pin. So it's quite difficult actually to even get the plug out of there. Here's the plug from the lock. And you can see it's kind of a skeleton plug. There's all the excess metal has been cut away. So it's a little bit more challenging to put this lock together, being in the shape that it is. Here's the 5 chambers starting here. And this last spot here is for your retainer pin. Another thing about this lock, these pins are not a very high quality pin. Now notice that with the key in there, the plug only turns 90 degrees. It will not turn around 180 so you can get the bottom pins out and do an easy rekey on it. So basically it's a throwaway lock. If you have one of these import locks, it may be worth pulling it apart just so you can see how it is made. But I do not recommend rekeying them. I normally try to sell the customer a better lock. Most of the American 700 look-alike import padlocks are tricky to rekey and usually not worth the expense. Suggest the customer purchase a better lock. Okay, I'm going to use the Peterson bypass tool for the American locks to try to open this U.S. General lock, which is the same basic design as the original American locks. We just take the tip, point the tip down to the bottom of the keyway, go ahead, push the tool in, feel for that gap in the back of the plug there. See if we can get the little tool to go through there. I had to push down on the shackle a little bit, but it finally popped it open. But that's how the little bypass tool works. It just goes in there and just turns that cam on the bottom of that shaft that's in there, and it'll rotate it enough to open it. And you can see this space in here, and this is what they try to utilize with the bypass tool, is to come up through the keyway and get the bypass tool in here and be able to manipulate this locking bolt even though that the cylinder is not turning. So that's the whole idea behind that. And of course the fix is to put a plate across here so there's no hole for the little tool to go through. Several companies now sell this bypass tool. There are slight differences. You will probably need to experiment with a couple of them to find the one that works best for you. Do not expect to be able to open all of the locks. Many of the American locks now come with protective wafers blocking the back of the plug. Some companies offer a punch for making a hole in the wafer. I want to take just a few minutes and talk about the padlock that has a lever lock mechanism in it. You can see this lock says 8 levers. So it is possible that you will come across a lock like this that has levers in it instead of being a warded lock or instead of having a pin tumbler lock, that kind of thing. It's a lever lock. Here's one that says Eagle double locking. It doesn't say how many levers are in there. We'll take a quick look at one of these just to show you what's inside of it. Now the main reason I'm taking time to go over this lock is so that you'll be aware that they are out there. If you come across a lever lock and you want to be able to recognize it so you know what kind of locking mechanism it has in there. It's not a pin tumbler, it's not a disc lock, it's not a warded lock. So you don't want to be mistaken and think it's something different. This is a lever lock. And oftentimes, if you have the key, of course, the key is going to be a giveaway that it's probably a lever lock. It doesn't look like a warded key or a pin tumbler key, does it? It looks more like a key like we would find for a safety deposit box. From the key, it looks like there's probably 4 levers in there. One here, and maybe 2 out here. So that's a little bit misleading. Okay, now with this lock, this was the one that said it was a double locking lock. And I've got the cover cut away so we can see how it works. And if you look here, this is the lever here. And it does lock here where it grabs the shackle here, and it grabs the shackle here on the toe of the shackle. So it's grabbed on both the heel and the toe of the shackle, but it's only one lever in the lock. And if you watch, what really happens is the lever moves back this way. It moves back to this side over here, and it'll move down a little bit. So it moves down and back. If you watch. Okay, so here the key will come around right here, and you can see this little slot in the lever that it grabs right here. You see it come around right there and start to move the lever back. So it'll move the lever back, and then it'll allow the shackle to open. See, it's released both on the heel. It's released both on the heel and the toe at the same time. So that's how that lever lock works. But again, there's only one lever in there. So it is possible probably to possibly use a warded tool, warded pick, maybe something like this. You may have to try different ones. You could get in there and you could try to see if you could move that lever back. See there, that warded tool moves that back. But they do make, there is a special set of tools you can get for lever locks if you look on the internet. Okay, we have a brand new padlock here. It's still in the package. It says Squire, it's manufacturer. It says lock makers since 1780. Indicates this is good for like a home and maybe a school locker type application. It says it's number 440. It says Squire on the lock. It says forged steel shackle, and it says 4 levers. Okay, so here the lock is out of the package. Notice it has a little dust cover, keyhole cover. It slides up and down. So you slide that up to move it out of the way so you can open the lock. Put the key in. Again, this is a lever lock. We turn it clockwise. That pushes the levers that way. You see that the lock opens. Now the lock won't lock back unless we reverse that and turn it counterclockwise. So that's okay. We can see that I've cut a piece out of the cover of the lock so we can see the levers right here. And then this little bolt right here where I put a little bit of red ink on the end so we can see the bolt. The levers have to be pushed up and the bolt has through to the right to unlock the lock, and of course come back to the left to lock it back. Now I cut a little bit too deep and I did cut the end off of this top lever. So I think I can still demonstrate this. We'll just see what happens here. You can see down in here where this hole is. This is where the tip of the key goes, down in that hole right there. That's on the back side of the lock. So this would be putting the key in. This would be where the keyway was at. It would go down. The nose of the key would go into that hole. You'd come around, push all of the levers up, and move that bolt to the right. And you saw it move to the right. Now the lock will be unlocked. You see the shackle is open. Now see if we can put it back. There you saw it move back. Here the key is turning and pushing all the levers into position. moving the bolt to the right, and the lock is unlocked. When the key comes back, it'll turn the levers, push the levers up again, and then turn the bolt to the left, and now the lock is locked. So this again is another type of padlock, but it's the same concept as we've seen in other types of lever locks that you'll see in some padlocks. Now here is another example of a lever lock. This is a master number 55 padlock. It has two levers in it, and just that's how it works. The two levers are grabbing the shackle right here. Okay, so here's the same lock with the cover cut away so we can see it. The master number 55 two lever lock. We have the levers here. We have the spring. See the springs in there? There's two springs in there that are putting pressure on the levers to hold them in that position. And if we put the key in, I'll put the key in, you'll see it'll push on the very, very bottom tip of the levers down here, and the bottom part of the lever will come out, and it rotates around this lug right here, and so this part will go back that way. The top part will go back that way as the bottom part comes in. So again, if you look right here to start with, you'll see the key. I'll try to hold that up so you can see that. If you look down at the very bottom, you see that key just start to come around and contact the levers there. And then, if I can hold it steady here, we'll see the levers at the top come back and the latch will be released. And then when I let the key off, the spring pressure pushes the levers back into the locked position so that when you push the shackle back down, the lock is locked. So again, this is another example of a lever lock. Levers found in lever locks come in many designs. The future will bring new designs as well as changes to existing designs. Normally, levers are flat plates that must be aligned for the lock to open. Each lever is normally held in place by a pivot pin and a flat spring. More levers will usually make the lock more difficult to pick. Lever locks are normally, but not always, operated by a flat key. The Sesame padlock with a four-wheel combination, or some come today similar with three-wheel combination, originally was a very good lock. This is one of the older locks. You see the box, Corbin Cabinet Lock, division of Imhart Corporation. Even came with a little registration card and little tool to reset the code with. This lock still has the original instruction sheet on how to reset the combination. So the way you change the combination on these original Sesame locks, you use your little change combination tool. You have to know the working combination. I have this one set to all ones. You take the little tool that comes with the lock. There's a hole down in there. You can see it. Tool goes down in there, press that all the way down, like so, and then just set your new combination. I'm going to put it back to all zeros. Okay, so I have all zeros on it. Take the tool out. You see it stay, I turned the wheel, so now it's going to stay locked. I put it back to all zeros. Back on all zeros, it should work. Just like that. Of course, today, many different companies are making a similar lock. Okay, now the way this works, that next to each one of these numbered wheels is a cam. And those cams have to all be turned to the correct position for the lock to open. And the way it works is something like like this in the locked position, you have the numbered wheel, you have the cam attached to the wheel. One part of the cam will have a flat spot, and then when you turn the wheel to the right number, the cam will be aligned in such a way as that this piece here will push up and free the locking dogs to release the shackle. Now you can have either 3 wheels or 4 wheels. You can have more wheels if the manufacturer wants to make more wheels in the lock. But say it's a 3-wheel combination, all 3 wheels have to be lined up so that the flat spot of the cam allows for this piece to move up. So if it's a 4-wheel lock, then all 4 wheels have to have the cams in the correct position. You can't, of course, just have 1 or 2 of them. You have to have all of the cams in the correct position. So we're going to take a look at another master padlock here, a combination lock. This is a model 178 master padlock. It is a combination lock with 4 wheels. In this cutaway view of the lock, we can observe the inner mechanism and understand how the lock functions. Now with this lock, not only has this cover been cut away, but one of the fingers from the locking dog plate has been cut away so that we can have a better view of the cam beside it. With this finger here cut away, this wheel is not really functioning to lock the lock. The lock is really functioning with just these 3 wheels, 1, 2, and 4. So it's operating like a 3-wheel combination lock. But again, this is so we can have a better view of what's happening inside the lock. We have the numbered wheels that have the numbers or digits 0 through 9. And we have attached to each wheel is a cam. And on each one of the cams is a flat spot. The wheels all operate independent of each other, but they all have to be in the correct position for the lock to open. If any one of the wheels is not in the correct position, then the lock will not open. To open, all locking dog fingers must be on their respective cam's flat spot. If one of the fingers is on the round part of the cam, the lock will not open. A spring beneath the dog plate provides upward pressure to force the plate upward and unlock the lock. We can see the cam right here and the flat spot on the cam. The flat spot is up, which would be in the unlocked position. And the combination for this lock is all zeros, so the lock is set to open. All of these fingers are on flat spots on the cams. So I'll try to get a close-up view of this. If you can look right here, this cam right here. Again, this cam is attached to this numbered wheel right here, the number 3 wheel. And if I turn that, you'll see that flat spot. It went to number 4 here, but also the flat spot is turned up now, so that if there were a finger there, it would now be touching the round part of the cam and not the flat part of the cam. I'm going to push that back. That's back, so the flat part is up. I think you can see it there. I'm going to turn it again, and I can see the flat spot goes on around. There it's back. Again, the 3's up, but the combination is really zeros. So that's how the lock works. We have to have all of the cams lined up with the fingers on the locking dog plate so that they're all on the flat spots of the cam. If they're on the flat parts of the cam, then the locking dog plate can pivot, and it will pivot right across here just about. This part will come up, and these fingers here will go down. That will happen if I press the shackle in, you'll see that happen. I'm going to do a close-up here with it, just like this, and I'm going to press the shackle in. You see that this part came up here, and this part up here went down. All of the fingers on the end of the fingers are down. They're now lower, right against the flat spots on those cams. And once that happens, when this pops up, the locking dog latches have room that they can retract into the center of the lock, and the lock will be unlocked. You can see here it's unlocked now. If I push it back down, now it won't lock until I turn one of these wheels back to a locked position. Now it should lock now. You see now it's locked. If I put this back to the combination again, back to all zeros, we'll do it again. And okay, I'm going to push on the shackle again, and again you'll see this pop up here, and these ends of the fingers out here go down onto the flat spots. So I'm going to turn it at a little bit of an angle, maybe you can see it better. Yeah, I think you can see that pretty clearly. So that's how that lock works. Now, different manufacturers are going to design the plates different shapes. They can be different shapes, and they can grab the latches, the locking dogs or locking latches in different ways. But you have the concept where you have the wheels with their cams that have to be lined up right for that dog plate to be released and the latches to go in and release the shackle. To reset the combination, we have to disengage the cam from the numbered wheel. The cams are pushed out, and I'll show that in just a minute, and that will disconnect them from the numbered wheels. And then the numbered wheels can be turned to a different combination. Then the cams are allowed to slide back in and mate with the partner numbered wheel again, and the combination will be changed. So there's different ways to do this with different locks, but the way this lock works is it comes with a little combination change key. And there's a hole on this side that you can see here. And so you put the key in on this type, and if you watch right here, I'm going to push on the key. I'm going to push on this. It's going to push the cam out. All the cams will go out at the same time. And then once they're out, I'm going to turn the key 90 degrees, and it will lock the cams out like that. So again, if you just watch right here, I'm going to push on the key now. See the cam go over? You'd actually see the number wheel move a little bit also, couldn't you? See that? So I push it over, and I turn the key to 90 degrees. That will hold it like that. Now I can change the combination. I can change them all. I'm going to just change this last number here. Let's change it to a 3. Let's make it a 4. We're going to make the last one a 4. Now notice that it says 7 up here at this time. But that's not the combination. The combination number on that wheel is 4, so it's going to be 0004. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn the key back to the starting position, and then the cams will slide back in, and they will mate again with their numbered wheels, and the combination is locked in. So now the combination is 0004. And if I want to lock the lock, I'll have to put one of the wheels in a locked position, push it down and lock it. It's locked now. See, it's locked. It won't come out. Now, to unlock the lock, we have to put this last wheel back to the new combination is a 4. 0004. And again, of course, now it will unlock. Like that. So that's how we do that. I can change this, lock one of the wheels back, relock the lock just to show that it is working. And then I'm going to go ahead and change the combination back. So I put it back on the existing combination, 0004, open the lock, take the key, put the key in, push it in, turn it 90 degrees, and then set this last wheel back to 0. So it's back to 0. I turn the key back to where it was originally, let the cam slide in. Cams all remate with the numbered wheels, and the lock is now changed. Now it has to be unlocked to reset the combination. So you have to know the combination to start with in order to reset it. Now some locks don't have a key. Some locks that are designed like this and look like this, they rekey a little differently, and you unlock the lock and you will turn the shackle 90 degrees and then push the shackle down to release the cams. But the lock will come with directions on how to reset the combination. Now on this original Sesame lock with 4 wheels, the cams are in the middle of the first 2 wheels here, and then these 2 wheels over here, the cams are in the middle. So there wouldn't be a cam here in this section here in a 4-wheel lock. If it's a 3-wheel lock, if you just forget this lock right here, this cam would be on the right of this wheel, and then there'd be 2 cams in the middle on a 3-wheel lock. But the manufacturers can design the locks differently and put the wheels or the cams on which side they want them on, so you kind of have to know that. But say we had this original Sesame lock and we had lost the combination when we didn't know how to open the lock, we could drill a small hole, and if we put a small hole right here, we could look in there and see both those cams, about a 3/32 size hole. And then we could do one in this space and see both of these cams, and we could probably identify the flat spots. Now with this lock, since I know the combination is all zeros, what would happen was if I was looking for the combination and I drilled a hole here, when I turned this to 3 right here, I would see the flat spot of the cam in there for this wheel right here. And since the combination is all zeros, the same would be true if I turned this to a 3, I would see the flat part of the cam right here. If there was a little tiny hole where I could look in there and I could see it. Now, what you do is you add 7. If you have the little hole and you turn it and you see the flat spot of 3, then you would add 7 to that, you'd get 10. Well, you don't use the 1, it's not a 2-digit number, is it? You just use the 0. Now what if the combination was 0400? Well, if that were the number for the combination, and I was looking right down here at that cam, I would see there would be a 7 here when the flat spot came up. It would look like that, and I'd see the flat spot. But that's not the number of the combination. Remember, the flat spot's got to be around here for the locking plate to be able to utilize it. So we have to add 7 to that. So we add 7, we get 14. Again, we only got a 1-digit number, so we just use the 4. So the correct number would be 4. So whatever number is showing when you see the flat spot, you would add 7. Now that's for Sesame lock and most of these kinds of locks. I'm not going to say it's true for every lock. The manufacturer could do something weird to make it different, I suppose. But the way this one works, if you add 7 to the 7, you get a 14, and 4 is the right number for this spot. Now another possibility for identifying the combination, we know that with this particular lock, the cam for this wheel is located right here. If it were possible to take a thin piece of metal like a shim and slide down in there right beside that wheel and then turn that around and identify the flat spot by just touching it and then moving the numbered wheel and see how it feels then. It could be possible to identify the flat spot without drilling the hole in the lock and looking down in there. But you'd have to have a lock that has a little bit of room where you could get in there and take something like a real thin piece of metal and identify that flat spot. Now there is a bypass method to bypass the lock on some locks that are not well made. It may work. If you take a real thin piece of metal like a lock pick and you can find a space up here towards the top and be able to slide it in and get underneath the locking dog plate and press it up, it may pop the lock open. You may be able to bypass the combination like that. But most of today's locks are made so well that it's not easily done. Okay, I just want to very quickly show you another lock, and show you how the knowledge that we learned off the Sesame lock applies to this. The wheel stack's not across the bottom, and notice that it's in line, it's vertically in line with this side of the shackle. And what's happening with this lock is this shackle is running through the wheel stacks, and so something is happening with those cams in there that are holding this shackle down when it's in the lock position. With all zeros, it's unlocked. I can pull it up. See? If I go to push it down and turn it, say to a 2, 0, 0, now it's locked. Because something has happened in there. The cam on this one is turned in such a way that it will not release the shackle. Well, you see this little nub on the shackle right here, little notch kind of sticking out. Well, there's more like that, one for each one of the wheel stacks. And so if the wheel stack doesn't have a slot lined up with the little nub sticking out, the shackle can't open. So if I turn this to 0, now all of the cams are turned so that they have slots lined up with the little nubs, and the lock will now open. If we want to rekey the lock, we have to turn the shackle 90 degrees like this so that the little nub lines up with a slot right here. Then we can push that down, and what we're doing is the same thing that the key did. We're pushing apart those cams and numbered wheels, and then we can turn this back. Notice now that the little nub is down underneath this plastic cover, and it's holding it just like the key did when we were doing the other lock. So it's the same concept, but the difference is this shackle is going down through the wheels, isn't it? This replaced the key. We know this has to push the cams apart from the numbered wheels, and so we know this is going through them. Okay, so I cut one of these apart so we could see the insides, and you could see what I was talking about. This is a cam that's on here. Here's a number wheel with a cam in the middle of it. Notice on this cam, there's a little notch on this side right here. And that's what is realigning with the number wheel. When you reset the combination, you're just aligning that differently with the number wheel. So it takes a different number to get the little notch turned to the right location so the shackle can slide through it. The shackle has these little nubs that have to slide through those slots. So if all three of them are lined up right, the shackle will pop up and you can open your lock. Most wheel stack combination locks, like the Sesame, work on the same basic theory. They have numbered wheels matched with cams. The cams must be aligned to a specific feature to release the shackle. It may be a flat spot like we saw on the Sesame lock, or it may be some other feature. For more information on rotary dial combination locks, please see the videos posted to our YouTube channel, locksmithdvd.com. Also, our Course 13 deals with safe locks. Practice working with padlocks. Practice picking and shimming padlocks. Practice rekeying padlocks. Practice changing the shackle. And practice changing from key retaining to non-key retaining. Some padlocks, as I said, they have the ball bearings in them, or they have some other mechanism in there to keep you from shimming the lock. So you can try, see what you can do with it, and then as you work with padlocks, you'll learn to recognize the ones that you probably can do and know the ones you probably can't do. Start a computer file on padlocks. You can store images along with a description of the features and the history of the locks. Start collecting padlocks. It can be an interesting hobby. If you can find two of the same type, you can keep one as a working model and disassemble the second one to see all the working parts. Padlocks have been around for thousands of years, and there have been thousands of suppliers worldwide. There have been hundreds of suppliers just in the United States. Here is a list of some of the major manufacturers. You may want to pause the video and study the list. If there are names you don't recognize, you may want to write them down and look them up on the internet. I mention A-Bus again because the A-Bus is a very popular padlock for a number of reasons. It has multiple keyways, it uses standard pins, it's easy to work with, and it is competitively priced. The A-Bus 8345 padlock offers these keyways: the Quick Set, Schlage C, Schlage Everest, Arrow, Corbin, Master, Sargent, Russwin, Weiser, and Yale. You may also want to do some research and take a look at the American lock, the A3650. It accepts 9 different door and padlock cylinders. You can quickly change the shackles. It easily converts to key retaining, and it has 4 shackle lengths. Now, just as important as the quality of the padlock is the quality of what you're going to hook the padlock to, whether it be a chain or a hasp. Here's kind of a pretty standard hasp. This one is sold by Master Lock. Has about a 1/4 inch or maybe a 5/16 inch hasp here that the padlock would go around. So it's fair quality. I've seen some of these that are, much smaller. Oftentimes I'll see a real good padlock hooked into a real thin chain, where the chain or the hasp are so thin they can be cut much easier than the padlock. So whatever you hook the padlock to, remember it needs to be of good quality also. Also, know that A-Bus does sell a pretty good security chain. They are available either in pre-cut lengths of 2, 6, or 10 feet, or they can be ordered to a custom length. If you did not see course 16, know that I covered 2 padlocks in that course, the A-Bus padlock and the Almont padlock. If you ever need a high security padlock, be sure to look at these. Now there are others also, but look at the Medico, Multilock, Eva, Asa Abloy, and A-Bus. That concludes this course. We want to thank you for buying this course. We hope you found it interesting and informative. Please visit our website at www.locksmithdvd.com and review the other DVDs we have to offer.